Welcome back to Solve Crimes with Rick and Gavin. I'm Gavin Fish. Our goal here is to actually solve crimes. And today we're continuing Treated Like Trash, our investigation into the 2008 death of Amanda Wienckowski. This is a case that should enrage you, and not only because of the brutal way that Amanda was killed, but because of the brutality with which Erie County, New York treated her family as they sought justice for Amanda, their daughter, sister, and friend. If this is the first time you've heard about this case, I suggest you go back and watch or listen to the previous 4 episodes. In them, you'll discover that police believed that Amanda Wienckowski was murdered by a man named Antoine Garner, but that he was never prosecuted because the Erie County Medical Examiner's office, for some inexplicable reason, ruled her death an accidental opioid overdose. Please subscribe if you haven't already, because even after 12 years of seeking justice for Amanda, this ride is just getting started. Today we're going to ignore most of the facts of the case. Not because they're unimportant, but because we've come to the realization that none of them matter unless we can get past this one simple thing, that nothing will change in this case unless we can prove that Amanda Wienckowski did not die of an opioid overdose. So forget that Amanda was found naked and frozen solid in a Buffalo, New York trash can. Forget that she had strangulation bruises on her neck. Forget that her neck was crushed. Forget that those injuries weren't included in the autopsy report done by Erie County Medical Examiner Diane Verdes. Forget that Erie County concealed the neck injuries by not putting her neck organs, including her larynx, trachea, tongue, and hyoid bone, into the bag of other organs that were buried with Amanda's body. Forget that Erie County fought tooth and nail when Amanda's mom sued to get access to Amanda's neck organs. Forget that Amanda was last seen entering the house of Antoine Garner. Forget that Antoine Garner had a history of strangling and raping women. Forget all of it. For the rest of this episode, we're going to be laser focused on one task. We're going to prove that Amanda Wienckowski did not die of an opioid overdose. And the funny thing is, it's not even going to be hard. So stick around. This is Solve Crimes with Rick and Gavin. The first thing you need to know is that Amanda Wienckowski's drug of choice, the drug that she was addicted to and that her body had become dependent on, was heroin. But she had recently cleaned up with the help of her mom, and she had enrolled in classes at Niagara County Community College. We're going to talk chemistry here for a minute, and we're going to keep it simple because that's the level at which I understand it. But specifically, I want to talk about what happens to heroin when it gets into the human body. In Amanda's case, she injected it directly into the bloodstream. Heroin is almost the exact same thing as morphine. The difference is that there are 2 acetyl groups in heroin molecules that aren't in morphine. These groups work to increase the half-life of the molecule, making heroin's effects last longer than morphine. Now, when heroin enters the body, one of the acetyl groups gets hydrolyzed spontaneously. No metabolism has taken place in the way that most of us think of it. What I mean is no enzymes make this happen. Basically, it just gets wet, and that converts the heroin molecule into what's called a monoacetylmorphine. Specifically, it's either 6-monoacetylmorphine or 3-monoacetylmorphine, depending on which acetyl group gets hydrolyzed. Next, enzymes in the blood, liver, and brain catalyze that second acetyl group, and the 6 or 3-monoacetylmorphine is then converted into morphine. Morphine then binds to the opioid receptors in the brain, which triggers the release of dopamine. And that makes the user feel an intense rush of euphoria, among other sensations. Many people don't know this, but the human body actually produces morphine itself, but at very low levels. When high levels of morphine are introduced to the body, there's a detection system that knows there's too much morphine in it. So it starts toward getting rid of the drug by flushing it out through the urinary system. And this is why urine drug tests are commonly used by opioid recovery clinics as a way to know if a patient has been using heroin. They look for two things in the urine. You guessed it, morphine and monoacetyl morphine. Usually toxicology labs test for 6-monoacetyl morphine. Now, there are a lot of variables that go into the metabolism of heroin, but in general, morphine is flushed out of the system through the urinary tract in about 7 days. 6-monoacetyl morphine, however, is completely flushed out of the system in about 24 hours. So when heroin recovery clinics test a patient's urine and they find 6-monoacetyl morphine in that urine, they know that their patient has taken heroin sometime in the previous 24 hours. Now, forensic toxicology labs are full of very smart people with lots of experience. So they have standard tests that they use to test the blood, bile, brain tissue, liver tissue, gastric contents, and yes, the urine of the bodies of the victims that come into the medical examiner's office. See what's listed very first right there? 6-monoacetyl morphine. And look, 6-monoacetyl morphine is something that they were looking for on Amanda's toxicology report. It came back negative, which means no 6-monoacetyl morphine was in Amanda's urine. I know what you're thinking right now. You're thinking if Amanda Wienckowski's urine didn't have any 6-monoacetyl morphine in it, then she couldn't have overdosed on heroin. And you're right. But I also know what lawyers are thinking right now. They're thinking, I could make the argument that her urine didn't have 6-monoacetyl morphine in it because it metabolized into morphine between the time she died and the time her body was found. Lawyers think that way. And yes, they could make that argument. But let me tell you the reason why that argument is stupid. First, remember that heroin is hydrolyzed into 6-monoacetyl morphine. It doesn't require any enzyme to do that, just add water. In order to metabolize further from 6-monoacetyl morphine into morphine, enzymes from red blood cells or brain or liver tissue must be present. Also remember that Amanda was found frozen solid. That means that her urine was frozen too. And that freezing process keeps metabolites and other compounds from degrading. In fact, one study shows that if you keep 6-monoacetyl morphine at sub-zero temperatures, it stores perfectly fine for up to 18 years. So the fact that Amanda was found frozen supports the evidence that she could not have taken heroin in the last 24 hours of her life, making it impossible for her to have overdosed. Rick, don't you think the medical examiner's office should have or would have caught this?
Yeah, I mean, that's, there have been toxicologists and pathologists prior to our involvement in this case who have corroborated what you're finding, and you did a deep dive, learned a lot on this, especially this episode. And then recently, we can't say the name just yet, but recently we found, we were put in touch with yet another toxicologist, and they said the same thing. I mean, it's hard to say if it was a mishap, that the ME's office had a bad day, or if it was, obviously there's some people that consider this a cover up. I don't know. If it's a cover up, is it a cover up for incompetence or something to do with Amanda herself?
Yeah. So if we go down the path of let's give them the benefit of the doubt, which I'm not inclined to do on this because it's so glaringly obvious, but let's say we go down the path of giving them the benefit of the doubt. It was after the Christmas holiday where nobody in the ME's office was working. And so when they came back to work, Amanda was found when they had not literally, but they had bodies piling up in the ME's office, right? They had a big workload. That's giving them the benefit of the doubt. Sure.
Can I interject something though?
Mm-hmm.
Why were there 4 signatures.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, that doesn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah. If they're so busy, why did they all take the time to read and sign the document? That's what you're saying.
Because that's not normal. We've asked plenty of people, and that's not a normal thing.
Yeah. So if we go down the other side of things, we're going to hold them to account for the hose up that happened here. The question then becomes why? Were they, like you said, were they covering up their own incompetence, or was there something a little more sinister involved? And what do you think about that?
Well, I've had this stance all along since we, took on this case and saw all the details and spoke with people involved in the case, including Amanda's mom. The thing that I think was going on is that, and this is not disparaging Amanda at all. I've always said that I think that the ME's office and possibly, people above the ME's office or involved in the ME's office that could influence them, I think they maybe saw Amanda as this, junkie, homeless prostitute kind of a thing. And they see this all the time, and they're just going to sign off on it as a drug overdose and just not deal with it. And what they didn't realize was that Amanda had a mom who was going to sink her teeth into this thing and never let go. And that's exactly what's happened. That's why you and I are here. And so I think it was something that they were just trying to sweep under the rug because it was just another fill in the blank. Right. And I think since then, they've been holding, steadfast to their original report because they don't want that to come out. They don't want to show incompetence. So they're taking that moving forward. You know that saying when someone's got their back to the wall, the only way they can go is forward. That's kind of how I feel this case has been handled by the ME's office.
So we've been in contact with a private toxicologist, and one of the questions that I had, do you remember that there was an interview with Dr. Vertis from, I think it was Channel 4 in Buffalo, and she said, does this rise to the level of overdoses? Does this meet the threshold? I'm not getting it, her quoting her right, but it was basically that question. And then she goes, yes, it does. And so I asked that question of the toxicologist, and he went, what is she talking about? First of all, there is no threshold because everybody is so vastly different. But if you look at Amanda Wienckowski and look at the things that were in her body, no, at best it's levels like therapy levels. It's therapeutic. And I thought maybe something that we could do, I have up here on my other screen, I'll show it, the actual toxicology report that came in on the 27th of January. So
now, correct me if I'm wrong, did Leslie, Amanda's mom, did she have to fight in court to get this, or did they give this to her?
No, they did not give this to her. That's what I thought.
So see, again, right from the beginning, it seemed that they were, wanting to hide something.
And it feels, Rick, that like these files never get out unless a case is closed. They never get out. And so I'm with you. I think they thought they'll never see this. They'll never see any of it. So, okay. Right. So there are a couple things that we've learned on this. And so you'll see that, they tested for benzodiazepines, for fentanyl, for oxycodone, and this word that I'm just not even going to try to figure out.
I was going to say, I've been so impressed with all these new words,
Sympathomimetics, is that what that's? I don't know how to say that. Now, I don't those all came back negative except for the cannabinoids. And as we go down, she did test positive for cannabis, but the toxicologist that we've been in touch with, his opinion is that she hadn't had marijuana for several days, maybe even up to a week. Right. I'm going to come back to this one, but if we go past to the volatiles here, it says ethanol. She did have ethanol in her blood and urine, but he believes, and actually Dr. Vertis believed, that happened post-mortem. That is something that happens in the human body after we die. In another toxicology report, which I don't have up right now, but a supplemental report, they tested for GHB, gamma hydroxybutyrate, which is something that we all know is a date rape drug. And Rick, when you and I first got that case and we saw the GHB, we were like, oh no, right? But his opinion on that one is also that there's such low levels and GHB happens naturally as part of the decomposition process.
And I mean, yeah, I mean, who knew, right? I mean,
Right.
but that's very interesting. That's why we're doing this stuff, and why you did the deep dive, because it's a good way for us to explain to the viewers, and again, the viewers on this show, what we're hoping to do is get them as infuriated as we are, and as Amanda's family and friends are, but you have to explain it to people so it doesn't get misconstrued in the process. But I do want to mention one thing about Dr. Verdes in that interview you were talking about. She was also playing politics in that video. She
really was
mentioning the second pathologist who did the second autopsy on behest of the family, and they had to fight for that. And the ME's office, including Dr. Verdes, were not cooperating as professionals should.
No,
there was stuff that was missing, and they had to fight to get it. And then they had to have babysitters at the ME's office to go through it. I mean, what is going on in this case? But she had lied about the second autopsy, saying that what this other doctor claimed, I'm paraphrasing, obviously, she didn't even back it up with photographs. And we know that there were plenty of photographs.
There sure were. There was tons.
Yes.
So yeah, she was playing politics for sure, thinking probably, hey, this will never get out. Nobody's ever going to be able to fact check me on this. Let me get back to the toxicology report, because there is something that's important. Let me see, get up here to this part of the test right here. Now, this 6-monoacetylmorphine we've talked about in the video, it came back negative, but Amanda's urine did come back positive for morphine and codeine. Now, morphine is a metabolite of heroin, as we all know. It's also a metabolite of codeine. So,
so it doesn't mean she was shooting up before she died.
Well, we know that she was not at least within 24 hours of the time that she died. But we also have learned that Amanda actually had a prescription for Tylenol with codeine in the week leading up to her death. She was in pain because of some other injury, and she took Tylenol with codeine number 3. Now, when we talked with our toxicologist friend, and he looked at these levels right here, he said, yeah, those are therapeutic levels. It makes sense. Right. So that is, and codeine is not a metabolite of heroin.
Right.
So, all the way around, if Dr. Verdes claims that, do these rise to the level of, does it cross the threshold of overdosing? Yes, it does. That is absolutely demonstrably false.
Yes. And it seems like and there's been toxicologist reports, we showed in previous videos that, so it's not just this one toxicologist. It seems to be universal that everybody agrees that she did not overdose that night.
Guys, medical examiners' offices don't make mistakes like this. You and I may not have known prior to this video that the absence of 6-monoacetylmorphine in Amanda's urine means she didn't overdose. But the 4 pathologists, the educated and experienced medical doctors, the very ones who signed off on that sloppy autopsy report that you can find on our website, solvecrimes.tv, those guys, they knew. So let's go back to the beginning of this video. Remember when I told you to forget that Amanda was found naked and frozen solid in a Buffalo, New York trash can? To forget that she had strangulation bruises on her neck? To forget that her neck was crushed? To forget that those injuries weren't included in the autopsy report done by Erie County Medical Examiner Diane Verdes, which was signed by 3 other pathologists? To forget that Erie County concealed the neck injuries by not putting her neck organs, including her larynx, trachea, tongue, and hyoid bone, into the bag of other organs that were buried with Amanda's body. To forget that Erie County fought tooth and nail when Amanda's mom sued to get access to Amanda's neck organs. To forget that Amanda was last seen entering the house of Antoine Garner. to forget that Antoine Garner had a history of strangling and raping women. Remember that? I take it back. We can't forget any of it. Now that we know beyond doubt that Amanda didn't die of an overdose, and that we can prove it, the Erie County Medical Examiner's office must change Amanda's cause of death from accidental overdose to homicide by strangulation. And the Erie County District Attorney must prosecute the person responsible. I believe, and the Buffalo PD certainly believed when they were investigating the case, that it's Antoine Garner. Help us put pressure on both offices, the DA and the ME. Let's just make this injustice go away. Please join Amanda's army by visiting her case page on our website, solvecrimes.tv, and by clicking that Join Now button at the top of the page. My name is Gavin Fish, and this is Solve Crimes with Rick and Gavin.